eBooks, are they a great deal or a great scam?
And home automation, is it finally time to get on board?
Welcome to Vertical Hold, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. I'm Alex Kidman, and I'm joined here by the man who strikes fear into the hearts of Gotham's criminal elite, Adam Turner. Adam, what's happening in the world of technology?
Australia's international broadband ranking has slightly improved under Akamai's latest International State of the Internet report. We've crept up 5 spots to rank 30th in terms of peak internet speeds, with a recording of 30.1 megabits per second. Now that sounds pretty good, but remember that most Australians have got no hope of getting those speeds, and on average we're still only getting 5.5 megabits per second.
Google's unveiled the latest update to its Glass product, with frames for prescription and sunglasses wearers. Before you get all excited and head down to your optometrist hoping to score a pair, you've still got to wait till Google's actually willing to sell them to real people.
After the digital switchover finished in December, Australians now face the digital retune. The digital TV broadcasters are shuffling around their channels to make way for a new generation of high-speed mobile broadband services. The retune reaches Melbourne on February 7 and Sydney on March 18, but you can go to retune.digitalready.gov.au to find out exactly when it reaches your area.
The Apple Macintosh, that's the computer, not the fruit, is 30 years old, and if you were around when it first launched, you're allowed to sigh right now and kind of feel old. Back then, Apple charged $2,500 for a machine with 128 kilobytes of RAM. That feels like quite a lot of money. Speaking of quite a lot of money, Apple's also announced its first quarter financial results, which saw it rake in over $57 billion. That also feels like quite a lot of money, so I guess some things never change.
So, Alex, you've been having a look at ebooks lately. What are your thoughts?
Well, ebooks is an interesting topic because whilst there's a certain amount to like, and there's a certain amount that takes advantage of technology, there's also a certain amount as a consumer of ebooks, and I'm an avid reader, to really dislike in ebooks, especially compared to regular books. I'll give you a primary example, and the one that a lot of people pick up on, and that's pricing. You go to buy a physical book, and depending on what you're buying, you'll pay, say, around 20 bucks. You go to buy an ebook, and what you're paying is around 20 bucks. Now, there's a bit of a disconnect there, and it's a disconnect that isn't really tilted in the favour of the consumer. The issue is that ebooks came along as a mainstream thing well after a lot of the other industries had been hit by the internet. Music's the big classic one. The music industry was not ready for the internet. As such, piracy picked up huge steam in the Napster era. That then saw Apple come in with the iPod, which was just phenomenally successful for its time, and was able to then cement it as the player of choice, at which point Apple could more or less dictate terms to the music industry. The booksellers saw this coming and said, ooh, we don't want to go down that road, so they've fought back pretty aggressively. And I mean, there have been some notable court cases detailing how they may or may not, I'm not a lawyer, I don't want to get sued, have colluded to keep ebook prices high. But the end issue is that you end up with a book and an ebook costing the same. Oddly enough, whilst that's a really common complaint, it's not actually the main problem I have with ebooks.
So if it's not about pricing, what is it that really bothers you about ebooks?
Okay, well, to demonstrate this, I've brought along a couple of props.
Ooh,
Follow along, there may be a test at the end. Now this is a book. I'm not going too fast, right?
No, I'm good. A book. Yeah.
Right. We know what a book is, we're all familiar with a book. Lovely book this, highly recommended. This is an ebook.
Whoa, slow down, Poindexter. What do you mean an ebook? They look like the same thing.
Well, they are the same thing. It's the same content, and yes, I am a sad enough Neil Gaiman fan that I bought the same thing twice. Although I'll admit that the ebook version I got on a particularly good special, which might seem to invalidate my pricing argument. But as I said, the pricing argument is not my big beef with it, because honestly, if the market is going to shift over to ebooks, I like the idea that authors might be able to eat from time to time. As someone who writes for a living, I enjoy eating from time to time. It is, in fact, in my top 10 favourite things to do.
Yes, I share that passion as someone who also writes for a living.
I thought you might. Now, pricing is not the issue. My big issue is, you take this book, we remember the book, right?
Yep.
Okay, I can do what I like with it. I've bought it. I can prop up a chair leg with it. I can give it to you to read. I can give it to someone else to read once you've given it back, if you give it back. I can sell it. I've got full rights to the whole thing because I've bought it. It's my book. I didn't write it, but this copy is mine and I love it. Then we've got the ebook. And it'd be tempting to say, hey, I bought that ebook, but I didn't. And this is what gets to me about ebooks. In almost every case, there are some small publishers who don't do this, but if you're talking Kindle, if you're talking iBooks, if you're talking Kobo, if you're talking Sony Reader, all of the big players, you're never buying a book. You're just not. When you click
even though you're paying as if you bought it.
Absolutely, yeah. Even when you clicked on the whole, yes, I agree to the end user license agreement for this device because I'm clicking through because really I just want to read a book, not a EULA. One of the pieces in there essentially says, look, what you're buying is a license. It's like buying a license to Windows software. When you buy a PC these days, you get, generally speaking, you get Windows or you get Mac OS, if that's your thing, with it. In either case, you don't own the software, you just don't, because if you did, you could take that software and run it on another machine. Try that without a whole lot of cracking with Windows, and you will be in a world of hurt because they don't want you doing it. Now, in the Windows world, this isn't seen as a massive issue because the number of people who buy components is still fairly small compared to the whole market. I'm not ignoring you guys, I know you're out there, I know you love building machines, and for you the cost of Windows can be a significant component. But for the mass market, you buy a laptop, hey, it's got Windows already installed on it. And the OEM price on that is, it's like $5 in the price of the laptop. You barely notice it, so virtually nobody cares. With an ebook though, you're buying a license to it for as long as they want to provide it to you. And what that means is that when your device dies, you've got to hope that that service is still running and that they've still got a license themselves to provide you with that book. Because if they don't, or if they've gone out of business, or if they've changed their model, then you're stuffed. You own nothing. You've got nothing you can on-sell, you've got nothing you can trade, you don't even have something you can read. And that's what gets to me about ebooks. That then comes into the pricing. I will happily, and I've bought quite a few ebooks, I won't deny, I will happily buy quite a cheap ebook because I'm licensing it. Essentially, I'm renting it. It'd be like, 5-10 years ago, going down to the video store and being told, oh yeah, look, all the overnight movies, they're now $30 because that's what you'd pay to buy them. But you're not buying them, you're just like renting them for a really long time.
Yeah. Well, and of course the flip side of that is when you shuffle off this mortal coil, you've also sort of lost your books as well, because you don't have the right to pass them on to anyone else, and you're breaking in terms and conditions by even giving your password to someone else. So that physical book that you've bought that will go on the shelf, that will go to your kids, maybe and their kids, or whoever else wants it after you're not going to read it anymore, can't do that with your ebooks. It's not set up that way, and that's why I'm a bit like you. I might buy ebooks that I'm happy to read once, but a book that I really want to own and cherish and perhaps pass on to someone else, I want that physical copy that's mine to do with as I wish.
So Adam, while you were over at CES, there was a lot of home automation gear announced. You're not exactly convinced though that everyone should be jumping on that particular bandwagon, are you?
Home automation is one of those interesting areas where we're just on the tipping point of it becoming mainstream. We're not quite there yet, and there are two main camps in the home automation space. There's the high-end systems like your C-Bus and your X10 that you'll probably get put in by a professional installer, and that starts to get a bit expensive. But down the other end of the spectrum, you've got your do-it-yourself stuff like your Belkin Wemo and your Philips Hue light bulbs, which change colour. Now, this do-it-yourself stuff is getting ready to go mainstream, but the thing that frustrates me is that it's still very segmented. It's not that easy to get everything to talk to everything. The LG Home Chat system for talking to your appliances is an interesting example. I can pick up my phone and send a text message to my fridge to see how much beer is in there. I can turn on my robot vacuum cleaner. I can check if the dishwasher's run. I can turn on the air conditioner and even preheat the oven. That's all great as long as I'm prepared to go out and buy all new LG appliances, and I'm not really prepared to do that no matter what the brand. I really don't want that kind of commitment just to get this stuff to work. So I think we need more interoperability. Now, Belkin is another interesting one. They've got their new smart light bulbs which talk to their smart light switches, their motion sensors, their power adapters. You can plug anything into these power adapters and turn them off remotely using even using a motion sensor. It's not really full interoperability, but it's certainly far more open ecosystem than you find from a lot of people. You can use pretty much any appliance you want as long as you're happy only switching it on and off. The Philips Hue light bulbs are very cool and you can change colors and set the mood, but they're not really designed to be part of a wider ecosystem. The technology that I'm really hoping will bring it all together is Zigbee. It's a short-range wireless protocol that we've been hearing about for a while, but has never really come to the forefront. It's sort of long been lurking in the background, and I think it's going to be the secret sauce when it comes to home automation. A lot of home automation stuff like the Belkin Wemo Gear and the Philips light bulbs run on Zigbee in the background. I'm a Victorian, and down here we're rolling out smart meters for every house, and they all have Zigbee built in. All you've really heard about it at this point is that there's the ability to buy a tablet which tells you how much energy your fridge is using and that kind of stuff. But these smart meters also have the potential to be a central hub of a home automation system if all the gear is Zigbee gear that will talk to it. It'll be interesting to see in the next year or two how much other Zigbee gear comes along which can tie into these smart meters, because that's what we need right now, something to tie it all together.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think I broadly agree with you. I think right at the moment you can do a reasonable amount with self-install. Belkin's Wemo stuff is a good example of it because it's fairly user-friendly. It's also, and I'll attest to this, fairly frustrating when it doesn't work. Now they use Zigbee, and they also use If This Then That, the internet-based service, which does allow you actually, if you're keen enough, to tie in all sorts of things. You really can get quite granular and quite complicated with that, but you've got to be techie enough, you've got to be keen enough to really want to do it. And I think it sits in that space right now, and I think I agree with you. It's not quite at the point where you'll head down to a department store and go, oh, I'll have this from that vendor and this from that vendor. And it is a little bit disappointing to see big players like LG saying, well, yeah, we recognise that this is a space and this is going to be a big thing, but we want it all within our ecosystem. Because ultimately, I actually think it's an exclusionary play for them that might get them some short-term, people who are crazy about LG or Samsung or Sony or whichever brand chooses to go down that road. People who are crazy about those products, yeah, they might buy a whole house full of it. But ultimately, people buy multi-branded products on price, on colour, on features, on all sorts of things. And when you're the guy stuck with like 3 or 4 things that work together but nothing else does, and everyone else can just grab anything, you're the one who's going to end up feeling hard done by. So yeah, it's a pity that it hasn't become more standardised more quickly.
So, robot vacuum cleaners, Alex, love it or hate it? I hear that you love them.
Well, I got the love side of the coin here, and look, I think there's stuff that's admirable about robot vacs as long as you understand what they are and what they're best for. You got your cheap robot vacuum cleaners, and I'm sorry to say the really, really cheap models, in my experience, aren't worth the money. They're really dumb, they're really bad. If you creep up the price ranges a bit though, there are some good brands out there. Not all of them, not every situation, but there are some good brands out there as long as you treat the robot vacuum cleaner as a kind of maintenance level vac. That is, it's something that you set off in your place every day to provide a kind of basic level, obviously no stairs because they don't climb up and down those just yet, but as a basic level clean, they can be very, very effective. I've tested them through a 3-level house and had one learn the rough layout quite well indeed. Not all of them are brilliant, some of them are remarkably stupid, and that can be very, very frustrating. And I will admit that they are still a pricey alternative to doing the vacuuming yourself, but if you're relatively cashed up and very time poor, they're a good way to keep your house in reasonable order.
Yeah, the last one I looked at was the Samsung Navibot, and this was a couple of years ago, and I think it was about $800. To me, that's a lot of money to spend on something like that. I wouldn't really call it cheap and nasty at those prices.
No.
But it was bloody useless. It staggered around the house like a drunken sailor. It constantly got lost and confused, even though it was supposedly looking at the ceiling to figure out where it was. It just didn't do the job. After it finished, you had to go around and do the job properly. You had to get into the corners, you had to get behind the furniture where it missed. It would bump into the table and forget where it was going, and then wander into the next room, get stuck under the piano, and then just curl up in a ball and start crying. It was just useless, and I can't think of any other appliance which I'd be prepared to spend that much money only to have the appliance do half the job. I wouldn't spend $800 on a dishwasher that half washed the dishes. So that about wraps it up for another episode of Vertical Hole. I'm Adam Turner, keeping the streets of Gotham safe.
And I'm Alex Kidman, and I endorse Joker brand toothpaste.